else have we got? Elvis. We've got Elvis.
Oh yeah,
I wash my
it's
hands in muddy water.
exactly. It's hard. I had to have sort of Elvis in my sort of list because obviously he's the one that started all this rock and roll
Yeah.
malarkey, as they say. Like, but the thing is, there was other people, but he sort of was the one that sort of everybody sort of got to see as a sort of poster boy for that sort of movement.
Yes.
But he was obviously extremely talented, and I think if I was ever to be asked name your favorite singer of all time, it would be, Elvis would be definitely one of them, and then Dan McCafferty. We just listened to Claim to Fame, but obviously Dan has this character in his voice, something about him that he can sing a menacing song like Claim to Fame, and he can turn around the next and sing Sunshine and
Yes.
make you cry.
Yes.
I mean, and the same, so you can say that the same thing about Elvis as an interpreter of songs. You just listen to his voice, and it was just, you feel that it starts in his heart and comes out through his mouth. It goes up to his brain and out his mouth. It's just, he sings with his whole body kind of thing, and you
Yeah.
kind of feel it.
When I was younger, I didn't not like Elvis, but it wasn't my kind of thing when I was a youngster. But as I got
Yeah.
older, I came to appreciate what he did. It wasn't just what he sang, it was who he was, how he did it, where he was. He was a poor boy from the South. The first things he released, they were played on the radio. And even the radio station played them as what they called race records because they thought he was
Yes.
black.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And when people actually found out that he was white, it caused
Hmm.
a huge hoo-ha.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing in the South back in the
Yeah.
1950s.
It's sad in a way to think back that some of this should, like college should have anything to say. People used to buy the Little Richard records and play that because Tutti Frutti has some really really guts to it, right?
Yeah.
And then they would buy the Pat Boone record and put that on top of the shelves because they couldn't have to be seen having a black person and listening to that.
Yes.
Little Richard used to hate it obviously because Pat Boone stole his sort of glory, but Elvis, through all these things, because Elvis didn't mind if he recorded with black or white people. Elvis, growing up where he grew up, those were his inspiration. That's
Yes.
where he took
He
up.
learned the music from the church, gospel singing and stuff.
Exactly. No, actually, I do have a story about that actually, because back in Sun Studio when we recorded there with the Fluffy Jackets in 2011, I was there with Manny, Charlton from Nazareth, Neil Murray from Whitesnake, and my drummer couldn't make it, so we had the original drummer for Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah.
Rob Hall was joining us as a session musician, and he told me a story about Elvis. So during the 60s, right, this drummer, he played drums all his life, and he says, well, my job at the time was playing drums in a sort of little nightclub in Memphis.
Yeah.
And during the day, to sort of add to his income, he was driving a flower van. So he because he used to have a little van to bring his drum kit everywhere. And so during the day, he was delivering flowers. And he says, who's ordering most flowers in Memphis? Oh, who other than Elvis, right? And Elvis wanted to make sure the grave of his mother looked okay. And this is before, apparently, they moved the grave to Graceland. But he said that he used to speak to Elvis quite regularly. So Elvis used to call him. It was like, how's the grave looking? Do you need some new flowers this week? Things like that. And he was really, really, he says, so Elvis was amazing how he cared about that, right?
Wow.
And then Elvis at the time was due in Hollywood making movies. Elvis could sort of, at that time, sort of walk quite freely in Memphis. And he used to go into that nightclub quite often and sit and watch the band. And he used to have his little private area where he and some friends used to sit and hang around. And then one night, Elvis walked up to the drummer and says, well, I have Jerry over here, and we're thinking back to head back to Graceland now, but you want to come over and play some drums so we can have a session tonight, just to have a laugh. And then the drummer says, and wait for it, he says, any other day, Elvis, but not tonight.
Oh
and
my
the
God.
reason And the reason was that he had he was dating this beautiful girl, he says that, and this was like the first time he actually think he was like had a chance to bring her home. So he says, as I'm following this piece of tail around, and he said, but he said at that time, he says like, this would happen every other week because Elvis was, he lived by night.
Yeah.
So he was there, and he was in Memphis a lot, So it wasn't like he'd never seen him. He spoke to him every other week anyway. But then he said that following week he was recording that comeback special in 1969, and after that, Elvis' star went stratospheric again.
Yeah.
And it got so bad that he couldn't actually walk around Memphis without being mobbed everywhere. So that was the last time he actually saw him.
Oh.
And he said, I saw him one more time. He says he was driving along in his Harley and he stopped at a traffic light and spoke to him for like a couple of minutes in his van. But other than that, it's one of his great regrets. He could have been recording with Elvis and Jerry.